welcome back, listeners, to BizBlend, where we dive into the raw intersections of business, life, and what it really means to build something meaningful. I'm your host, Sana, as always. Now, today, I am actually pausing for a moment to reflect on something we all chase in entrepreneurship: this drive to create, to innovate, but often at the cost of losing touch with who we are beneath that hustle. It's easy to get swept up in the pressure, isn't it, listeners? And that constant push for more, bigger, better, until one day you look in the mirror and wonder where the real you went. But what if, just imagine this, entrepreneurship could be a path back to yourself? We are definitely going to flip the narrative. We are going to definitely flip the concept here. What if entrepreneurship can be a vehicle for personal growth, even spiritual awakening, where you build from a place of presence rather than endless striving? So, listeners, joining me is Rebecca Wilson, an award winning executive coach, speaker, and mindfulness teacher who's walked this path herself, listeners. From high achieving corporate roles in consulting and healthcare to rediscovering her inner steadiness through mindfulness and yoga. Rebecca now guides founders and leaders to expand their impact from the inside out. Yes, that's the key word in there, inside out. And with that, Rebecca, thanks for being here. So let's get together and explore how entrepreneurship isn't just about the bottom line, but it's about becoming whole.
Ah, Anna, thank you for that beautiful introduction. And thank you so much for having me here on the BizBlend podcast. It's a delight.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Rebecca. That really, really means a lot. And I think personally, I feel this is, I said it, I think I feel like this is definitely flipping the script here because whenever we talk about entrepreneurship or business, we always, look at or approach things from a very, black and white perspective: numbers, profits, do or die situation or aggression, um, and, all that hard stuff. But entrepreneurship as something for a spiritual growth, I don't think I haven't had any kind of very specific conversation around this on this plant yet. So this is really going to be very interesting. And with that, let's try to understand, how entrepreneurs, like, they see their ventures as extension of themselves. It's like their own babies, their own, self. But how exactly does starting a business serve as a tool for self actualization, especially when the daily grind it feels more like a survival than growth?
Oh, yes. I feel like you've articulated so well what so many people relate to, right? Or experience
Mm,
in entrepreneurship. It can really feel like we're in this place of survival. And what I have experienced and what I support my clients with is really shifting from that place of survival to that place of really looking at every aspect of our life, including entrepreneurship, including vocation, as a potential outlet for our growth and evolution and self-actualization. And
mm,
it's fascinating what becomes possible when we make this shift because it opens us to taking things a little more lightly, experiencing a bit more ease, a bit more um, flexibility
mm,
when we're able to look at the challenges that come our way through entrepreneurship and ask if this
mm,
challenge in front of me was an assignment, a calling into the next version of who I'm becoming. What would
mm,
be here for me? What would be here for me to learn? What would be here for me to unpack, explore? And it's a way of really zooming out. And as you so beautifully put, Sana, like flipping flipping the script, flipping the perspective on its head a bit. Because as you said, entrepreneurship it can feel like an extension of oneself. It can feel all consuming. And the balance that I think every leader must strike is this embracing this paradox that as an entrepreneur, as a leader, your mission is bigger than you. It often feels much bigger than you, stronger than you, can feel all consuming. And we have to hold that together with this truth that who you are is also bigger than your business. It's bigger than your entrepreneurship, and you are on a bigger, broader growth journey. Your entrepreneurship journey can be a part of that and can be a vehicle for that.
Wow, that's really beautiful, Rebecca. That's really beautiful, and I think it's so refreshing. And there's certainly a personal uh, journey, a lived experience behind this. So, um, for all of our listeners, for me as well, and there, Rebecca, what was that exact moment you realized that your achievements they have replaced your connection? And also, if you can share, how did that realization change the way you built and led?
Oh, thank you for that question. Um, so I can remember so clearly this moment sitting in my office when I was working in management consulting and really having this deep questioning of like, why am I doing what I'm doing and why do I care so much? And having a bit of shame actually about
Oh,
how desperately I wanted to be recognized for my achievements, how desperately I felt like I needed validation from others when I was doing what I was doing. I needed people um, to see the outputs of my work, to recognize my excellence. It felt like I was really, rather than being deliberately using my ambition as a tool to advance a purpose bigger than myself, I felt like I was being driven by my ambition. Like my ambition was driving the bus of my life. And like I was
mm,
really being led by this part of me that didn't believe that I was enough, that didn't believe that I was whole, and felt like I had to prove to the world that I was good enough. And that's why I was working so hard. And when I started to see that in myself, I remember just sitting in my office thinking like, I feel so lost right now. And on the outside, I was achieving, I was succeeding, I looked like I was doing an amazing job, but I didn't feel successful. I didn't feel like I was enough. I didn't feel like I was worthy. I actually didn't really like myself very much. I didn't like who I was being. So so that was really one of the turning points. And in fact, around that time, a good friend of mine passed away very
oh,
suddenly and tragically. And I was
mhm.
hearing the stories from people whose lives she had impacted. And it made me think of, what would happen if I died tomorrow? What would people say at my funeral? And I imagined having a eulogy that read something like, oh, yeah, Rebecca worked really hard. She was really ambitious, and that being kind of the best
Yeah.
thing anyone could say about me because that was my identity at that time, and I didn't want that to be the story, so I, um, I began to really go on this deep quest to get to know myself and to understand myself and to, really wanting to overcome this compulsive striving that seemed to be fueling my entire way of being in the world.
Wow. I think the unfolding of events, that internal dialogue you had, and I think, uh, of course, I mean, it was definitely a very tragic loss, but that even kind of really, ignited that um, passion of exploring this question
Mhm.
around your identity and, whether it's your ambitions, your achievements dictating, or, as you very beautifully said, driving the bus of your life, or it's you who is, driving yourself. Uh, so that's I think these small hinges, they swing big doors. And uh, definitely, if let's say, Rebecca, if anyone who is listening to us right now, they are also in the same place and they would like to get onto this journey of self actualization, or, uh, trying to understand themselves inside out.
Mhm.
What's, one first micro shift, uh, for them, let's say, an high achieving founder or a business person?
Yeah. It this is what I've found to be, and this is where I guide my client in terms of where to start. And where I learned to start was in this act of what I refer to as quieting the noise. So, finding ways to begin to quiet the noise of the world around you, the noise of the many voices who are saying who you should be and what you should do, so that you can start to hear that voice within you and start to trust that place within you that knows what you want to create, who you want to be in this world. And it sounds like a remarkably simple shift, right? And it can be so incredibly challenging for high achieving founders, entrepreneurs, executives to take this step of quieting the noise because it requires that we slow down. And for many of us, we have been conditioned to be going, 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 going at high velocity. And it can feel really unsafe to slow down. It can feel in our nervous systems like the moment we pause, the moment we step away from the work to quiet the noise and to hear what's within ourselves, like that moment can feel very unsettling because we're not used to quiet. We're not used to stillness. So, a micro practice that I recommend is just to meet yourself where you are, and it can start very simply. Meditation is a great way to quiet the noise, and you don't have to sit in stillness for 30 minutes a day to start. You could begin by simply um, going for a walk without a podcast in your ear, or going podcasts are great, but it's also nice to have some time where we're not having new information coming our way so that we can
Mhm.
start to digest and process and just be with ourselves. So to do things like, yeah, traveling in your, if you're driving in your car or you're on public transit, leaving your, uh, leaving your device aside and just being in some silence, going for a walk in silence, seeing if you can even take a pause for a minute before you join your next Zoom call instead of just jumping from one thing to the next, inserting those deliberate pauses. And what this does is it starts to give our brains and our nervous systems this new information that says, oh, it's actually safe to slow down.
Hmm.
And maybe there's something here for me. The world doesn't collapse around me when I slow down for a few minutes, when I pause to take a breath before speaking or before joining my next meeting. And then gradually we start to warm up to this level of spaciousness, this level of slowing down. And then we're able to start again to hear those more subtle whispers from within ourselves that are often drowned out by the noise and busyness of our lives. And then from there, we can start to feel into what what's possible for us in our lives, who we want to become. And it comes not from a place of looking around to see how we should move through the world, but really sensing into, again, from the inside out, what we want to create, who we want to become.
Okay. I think you really, really put it very well, Rebecca. And I also believe that for anyone, uh, founder or someone who is really, really um, they have intention. They're aligned with this idea of uh, self awareness, or self actualization, and they really want to get started with the tools or channels. Um, I mean, we have seen psychologically, biologically, that change is something that, our brain, our bodies, um, it fears away, it kind of runs away from. And if we're trying to put ourselves into more and more pressure, into, taking those huge, big steps, sudden changes, it really feels like a jolt. Uh, and sometimes it can really, really, not backfire, but really get us into a very um, confusing position, like a dilemma, within us, within our minds. So I think small steps, whether it's doing meditation or breath work, or, just quietness, no podcast, no music, nothing, just, sitting, maybe sometimes sitting in nature, quiet, taking a quiet walk in there. I think these small steps, they can be so fruitful in getting started.
Yes, absolutely. I was speaking to a client recently who is a business leader and a busy mother with young children. And for her, like where she started was she just decided to take a bit of extra time in the shower to like quiet her mind and feel her feel her hands, like, shampooing her hair, and that was what was accessible, and that was where she started to just practice, "Can I slow down for my daily shower?" And use that as a way to practice going a little more slowly. So there's so many ways you can start with this, and as you said, it's really about taking those micro steps, as you put it, to signal that to your brain that this is safe. It is change, but when we take it bit by bit, step by step, we can really stack the odds in our favor that the change will last and that we can accumulate this evidence and form some new neural pathways that say, yeah, you can slow down. You can make the space that you need to self reflect, to pause, to be with yourself, to get to know yourself at a deeper level, to understand your fears and desires and values and all the things that drive your behavior. And that's really where, once you start to get to that place, business feels like an outlet for that self instead of feeling like something that the self is just consumed by.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely. And also, uh, Rebecca, it can be a kind of a pushback. So for entrepreneurs who are in survival mode, there's cash flow stress, sometimes tiny teams, or maybe some personal, huge caregiving or providing responsibilities. Um, these channels or tools, they can sound like a luxury. Do you
Mhm.
think that um, this is a privileged narrative, as in self actualization, or is there a lean version that works, when we are deep down and we really, really want to get out of it?
Mm, yeah, that's a really powerful and important question around whether certainly this is a privileged this can be a very privileged version to be able to look at it. So there's a couple perspectives that I have on this. One is that it's a shame that we live and work within systems where something like pausing to take a breath is viewed as privilege. And then the other piece that becomes really clear for me is that for any of us who have the privilege to be able to pause and slow down, also have the responsibility to do that, because when we don't, we're perpetuating the very systems that are
Mm,
extractive and depleting and lead to this this normalization of hustle
mm,
and go, and that's the only way to survive. And it's only by looking at our own internal belief systems, the conditioning that we have that tells us that to be in this hustle mode is the only way to survive. It's only by looking at that and questioning it that we can start to rework the systems that are creating, that are normalizing this way of being, this way of moving through business, through life. But as for practices to meet where you are, I think anything that supports. So it's easy to view business through that lens of survival, right? And I
mm,
think there are cases where it is true. If your business does not survive, um, you're not able to put food on the table. And if you're not able to put food on the table, that is a true threat to your and your family's survival.
yeah,
So there can be true instances of that, but there can also be a perception around business leadership that survival of business equals survival of, myself. So it brings the nervous system into a state of fight, flight, freeze, um, reactivity, and that autonomic sympathetic nervous system response. And often that's actually not the case, right?
mm,
When we view the business as where we derive our sense of identity, it can feel like the business's survival is equivalent to our survival. And that's often not truth. It can be a perception. But again, when we're able to reimagine ourselves as being bigger than our business having a mission that is bigger than us, but us not being completely absorbed
mm,
identity wise in the success of our business and having other outlets that express who we are, what matters to us, we can recognize that survival of business does not equal safety and survival of me. And then that actually frees us to lead more creatively. And we know that leading from that place of survival is not the most conducive way to bring
mm,
success. Whereas leading from that place of trust and creativity is more correlated with business outcomes and leadership effectiveness. So it can be tough, but it's a very important question, and one that there's a lot of nuance around for everyone to sense into. But I would suggest that for anyone who feels like they're in that survival state, to just ask what would open up, or what does open up, if anything, when you ask the question of, is my business truly, is my survival, is my ability to survive as a human truly at stake based on the survival of my business? And yeah, seeing what perspective that opens up.
definitely. That's very pertinent, very crucial question. Um, and of course, Rebecca, before we wrap up, if our listeners they would like to connect with you and they would like to seek your guidance to get started on this journey, what would be the easiest way?
Yeah, so my business is Arborvida Conscious Leadership. And my website is www.arborvida.com, ARBORVIDA.com. So you can check me out there. I have a newsletter that goes out twice monthly with different tips and stories and tools to support your leadership journey from the inside out. So would love to hear from folks there with any questions or to follow along.
Superb, superb. So, listeners, I'll have all these links mentioned for you in the show notes. So, just refer to them along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And if I can say something, um, if you are building a company, or and actually not or a self at the same time. Today's conversation is definitely a reminder that the vehicle can also be the practice, because alignment is not a vibe, it's not fluff, it's a repeatable stack. Breath, of course, boundaries, body, and then honest, raw check ins with yourself, especially when it is messy. It is possible, and just refer to the show notes to get started with that journey. And Rebecca, of course, thank you so much for bringing um, both edge and, if I can use, you brought tenderness to leadership. So that is really such a beautiful blend in there. And thank you so much. This was really, really needed.
Okay, thank you, Sana. It's been a pleasure to be on the BizBlend podcast. Take care.
Thank you. And to all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this blend. And until then, build well, lead gently, and let presence set your pace. Thank you.